The following program is rated PG. Parental guidance is advised, as the theme or content may not be suitable for all children. Viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hi there and welcome, friends. We're back in my kitchen again, and this time I'm here with Deven Kane. He's a Kelowna writer. We've got some of his books up here. So let's dive right in. So you live here in Kelowna.
I live here in Kelowna. Been here for about 19 years now.
Okay. Are your books fiction, nonfiction?
Oh, these are definitely fiction. This is a dystopian trilogy of stories set in the near future in the Pacific Northwest. So people in the States might think it's talking about Washington State, and people in BC will know, no, it's about BC, but as long as everyone's happy. These ones are more urban fantasy, and we'll probably talk more about that, what that is a bit later. But yeah, they're more supernatural thriller / urban fantasy in focus.
So full disclosure, I have read all these books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've got how many different worlds? They're not all in the same world.
Well, this trilogy obviously follows the same world, the Pacific Northwest. The stories from the start of the first book through the end of the third. This one starts basically in late March, early April, and everything wraps up here before Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving. So it's a very short time frame for 3 books, but that was kind of how the story unfolded.
Why do you think Canadian Thanksgiving is earlier than American Thanksgiving?
That's easy, because it is not so cold yet. End of November, no Canadians thankful anymore because it's cold and the snow's coming. We're shoveling our driveways. But in October, early October,
It's amazing
the trees still have a few leaves left.
Yeah, I think it's my favorite season.
That's why Thanksgiving is earlier in Canada, because we are more thankful earlier in the year. I can't prove that, but that's my theory.
I think it's a good theory. I tend to agree with that. All right, so we've got this world over here. We're in the Pacific Northwest. Where are we in Darkwood?
Darkwood is set in a fictional world because I wanted that one is it's a book about climate change, but not in a climate change science kind of a way. It's about, well, every story needs conflict, right? If there's no conflict, there's no victor, there's no challenge, there's no obstacles. You have to have some kind of tension and conflict. And I thought, what better conflict and tension can there be than science and faith?
Okay.
And so you have a bunch of people living in the city, the urban part of the urban fantasy, who were raised maybe in a culture that revered the forest, which the forest is the religion of the planet. And so climate change, if it's catastrophic, it means you are not only polluting the atmosphere, you are abandoning what was important to your entire culture. Now, your other side of the equation, the fantasy element of this one, is that the people living in that are the keepers of the ancient ways, who is one of the major characters in the book, they are very faith-filled, and they have a very strong opinion of what's wrong with climate change. So are the people of the cities, but they don't agree.
Okay.
And which one's right? Well, it turns out they're both half right and they're both half wrong, and like all good conflict, they got to figure out a way to put aside the differences and work for the common good, which is not easy when you have faith clashing with science.
Okay. And it's urban fantasy. Was there was like a slash in there, right?
Yes, because urban fantasy is typically, the general idea of the genre is that you're taking a known city, like say Vancouver,
Okay.
or Seattle, or Toronto, or New York, but you're infesting it with otherworldly elements.
Oh, okay.
Jim Butcher does that with his Harry Dresden series, where he's a magician. Well, sorry, he's a magician in the old school sense in Chicago.
Oh.
Or Neil Gaiman wrote a great book called Neverwhere, which is set in London, England. And what happens is the protagonist literally falls through the cracks in the sidewalk somehow and ends up in the upside down London, which is filled with all kinds of creeps and weirdos and supernatural boogeymen. And so it's a clash between the normal world and the supernatural element of that. That's typical urban fantasy.
Okay.
Because I wanted to make a place where the entire planet's religion was the forest. There's no city really that I'm aware of in North America that I could write to. So a lot of the cities here look a lot like North America as far as, there's taxi cabs, there's radio stations, there's, government and stuff. And but at the same time, there's a very strong forest element. So I decided to just put it into a fictional world.
Okay.
But it still counts as urban fiction, urban fantasy, because it's a known city or it's analogous to a known city.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, it felt like it wasn't in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, it's not in the Pacific
I
Northwest.
felt
no.
like maybe you were in a different timeline in Scotland or something like that. Like
It could be.
Felt druidic.
Well, you know what? Well, the Fade, as they're known in this book, are very druidic, and the main character, Marcrin, who was a powerful priestess of the forest, very druidic, and a lot of the other language elements of the book are based on Scots Gaelic.
Oh.
It's not literal Scots Gaelic, but it's kind of an Anglicization of it to make the story,
Okay.
give it a flair to it, but also keep the language consistent.
Right.
Yeah.
Would I be able to read the words? Because in Scots Gaelic, it just seems like it's a huge amount of consonants in one block.
And then a bunch of random apostrophes and stuff.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
what I would do is I would take the actual word that I'm using as a background word, and I'll basically pick out the portions of it that I can string together, and then say it out loud. If you can't say it out loud, your reader's not going to be able to say it in their head.
100%.
And that's very frustrating for readers. When Prince got away for years, being the artist formerly known as Prince with this
Yeah, a glyph.
glyph, and some people do that in their books, and more power to them. I want stuff that I can say out loud if I'm reading it publicly,
Right, yeah.
and that the average reader can read it and not kind of go.
Yeah.
You want them to be able to just hear it in their head, if not say it out
Yeah.
loud. And sometimes I have to say it out loud. So
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So you've got two distinct societies in this one.
yes, and eventually, of course, they have to clash. Well, they do clash and have to figure out what to do. Otherwise, they're all dead meat. They
Okay,
don't get over it.
all right. And over here in Treehawk?
Treehawk is even more close to our current world, but it's a book, it's not all about racism, but racism is something that has bothered me for many years. And I started writing this book, and about 3 or 4 months in, the whole George Floyd thing happened in the US, and just kind of underlined, I already knew it was an important issue, but as a white person, you've got to be so careful not to try and tell somebody else's story, because you might get it wrong, and if you get it right, it's not your story to tell. And there's been some pretty famous blow-ups recently of authors trying to be helpful and writing on behalf of somebody else, and really offending the people they're trying to help, because we have our own voices. Let us speak.
Yeah.
So to avoid that problem, I created a world and created races, and then gave them racist problems.
Okay,
Because
okay.
that way I'm not, so it's not based too tightly on any particular racial group in North America,
Yeah.
but just the issues of racism are everywhere. And so I wanted to talk a bit more about that. So
Yeah, the people in this book that were just kind of milling around the city, I found there's a lot of gradations of like people who just took their privilege for granted and were blind to all the things.
yeah,
And then there were some people that were just horrible people.
Yes.
And yeah, it was a really interesting treatment. But I don't know which one is creepier.
they both have because they both have there's something sinister and
Right.
supernatural from outside our world that is wreaking havoc. And
But they're not really outside our world. They're all things that are with us all the time.
well, especially about the whole racism thing, but there's also something behind that is supernatural.
Right.
And the racism just makes it worse and
yeah.
you know, inflames everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like how you have in both of these books the really terrible thing that's coming to get us all because of our bad dumbness is it's subterranean sort of. So it's like the whole world looks great, and then all of a sudden there's something terrible happens.
Yeah,
right?
Underneath, underneath the forest and the happiness, there's this.
Yeah, she's not okay.
She's not okay. No, she's not okay.
So yeah, I feel like that's a really good metaphor for how we can just go about our day, living in Kelowna or in the Okanagan, but maybe we need to stop and look deeper about our actions, about our behavior toward people that we share our world with.
Absolutely.
That we could be, you know, like in this one, like climate change.
What if there's more to climate change than
the devil?
Yeah. Well, I think the backline says, you know, what if there's more to climate change than just the weather?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I got the idea. Actually, I was driving downtown Kelowna during a season where it was 2019, and there's a lot of wildfires happening, and smoke blanketed the city for weeks on end. And there's like a really dense fog you couldn't get away from. And I remember I was walking around downtown, and I was in the shadow of a building, and the sun was shining this way over and reflecting off the windows across the street.
Okay, sounds pretty.
And it was this gross yellow gray color.
It's not so pretty.
And of course there's the smoke in the air, and of course the smell of the smoke. I remember looking up, kind of going, "Oh, that is so good." I mean, we're breathing this. I mean, look how it's just so unnatural. It looks like alien. Like, wait, what if?
Oh.
And I had this writer's like, what if there was something behind the smoke and the fires that was being unleashed on us because of our bad actions?
Well, there's a definite parallel to real world, right? So we've got the smoke and the fires, and we've got climate change, however you want to fight about it, I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's definitely, like, we haven't taken care of our mother. And so she's not able to take care of us.
Exactly. It's not that she's coming back to beat on you, it's just that she can't protect you if you don't care for her. Yeah. And like I say, you know, whenever you have a society where the whole thing was built on this kind of faith-based view of the forest and reverence for the forest and basically ecology, and that people start getting away from that, like in any kind of, you know, world religion today, you've got people that are the, you know, solid, true believers. They may not be experts, but they have a strong faith. Then you have people that have already examined everything, and they're already quite knowledgeable, and some of them are not the nicest people because they're kind of rigid. But
I feel like I know who you're talking about in this book.
That'd be Mark Kryn, yes.
Yeah, she scared me every time she opens her mouth.
A lot of people really liked her character. She is such a strong person. They respected her as a regal, passionate leader, even if you didn't agree with her.
For me, it felt like she should have like entry music whenever she comes in, kind of like a Darth Vader-y.
Her own theme song.
Well, because she's wearing cloaks and bone masks and incanting stuff. Yeah, she's just a scary piece of work.
The fire's in my bones.
Yeah. She says weird and scary stuff, and
well, that was part of the fun. Part of the fun of writing that was that I made the urban chapters where people are just like the main character. There's not the cover, obviously, but there's a television reporter and her cameraman. It's told from the cameraman's point of view, but they're both kind of the co-protagonists, and they're very urban. They were raised in kind of like post-forest culture, where they don't, you know, attack people for believing in the forest, but they don't take it that seriously either. Yeah, they're university educated. They're kind of skeptical about the whole mystical part of it, but they do think that, you know, ecology is important. Then you have the faith side, which is very, you know. But the thing that was fun about writing this was that the urban people talk like we do. They're urban. They're educated. You know, they're television reporters. The people from well, it's called a monastery, but people that are the keepers of the faith that way speak like the Lord of the Rings, kind of the very high fantasy kind of, and they use all these archaic phrases.
It felt almost like I was like in a different book, and then you brought them together.
The first
that must have been really hard because
it was fun to try.
One
it took
was
me
like
a while.
Lord of the Rings meets I don't know, Odd Thomas or something.
Yeah, or Harry Bosch or something.
Harry
Just very, yeah, that was part of the fun of it. And the two ladies that did the first big edit on the book for me, we've been writing for like 7 years between the two of them, but they said, yeah, we read the first chapter, then we read the second chapter, went, wait a second, is this a different book? And then she read the third chapter, we said, I know what he's doing. Wow, this is kind of cool. You know, the voice
really
of each chapter is very different because it's from the archaic, very highbrow speaking, or it's from the, hey, modern people. And then, of course, when they all get together, you have to keep it in your mind, okay, whose point of view is this chapter being told from?
Exactly.
And make sure that it's written the way they would think, and also how they would react to certain things. And anyways, and seeing the other characters through each other's eyes. So.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I'm curious about. One of them is it hard when you've taken a lot of elements from different genres to answer the question of what sort of book this is?
It is very hard.
Yeah.
It is very hard. But fortunately, a big trend in recent years that has saved my bacon, or my boniface in this case, we'll get to that in a second, is what they call cross-genre writing. You see a lot of, there'll be supernatural thriller or psychological thriller, but a supernatural thriller, like Dean Koontz writes a lot of psychological thriller slash horror, kind of, you know, or Stephen King. Some of his books are more horror, some are more psychological thrillers that have maybe some creepy elements to them.
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman's, is really urban fantasy. Nowadays, though, I mean, romance, you can add romance to any genre.
There's a little bit in here.
Well, there's a couple there that really adores it. There's a guy and his wife, and they are absolutely a team. And they really respect each other, and you have to take them as a team because they work together. And I wanted to do this. That's something you see a lot. You know, as a couple who are good people dealing with a really, really bad situations and having and the guy on the cover here. Well, no, it's not him, but I don't want to give away too much by telling much about that guy, but he's one of the main guys in the story. But the other guy, who is the husband in the character, has stuff from his past that he has not dealt with.
Okay.
And with the thing that's coming up literally from below, and it's deadly and dangerous and on a vengeance tour, if he doesn't deal with his crap from his past, he cannot move forward to do what needs to be done in order to save the woman he loves.
Right.
That's his motivation, to save the woman. And then
she's really capable too, though.
I deliberately put that in. It's funny in spots where he's there coming in, breaking through to save the day, and finds her, and she's already got everything under control.
Yeah,
you know, the bad guy,
saved herself.
She saved herself, and she's on her way to meet him to see if he needs any help. You know, so that was done deliberately, a bit of lighthearted, kind of like. It's so awesome that you guys are so committed to each other.
Right.
But she's not a damsel in distress. She never is. And he's not an idiot that needs her up. They need each other.
Right.
But they're both very capable as well.
How do you feel about your characters? You seem to have like an affinity. Like, are they your kids? Are they your
they have
friends?
They have minds of their own.
Oh, okay.
This book, actually, there's one sequence where I wanted. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It's this book over here. This book. I wanted the characters to break into the walled city where the goal, they have to get inside the walled city in order to achieve their goal and save the world, kind of thing. And I wanted them to go in, and I just had this, it has me now. I invented an entire couple of chapters and it just was really hard to write. It's really slow and really difficult. And I remember I went home one day and I thought, I'm fighting with these characters won't do what I want them to do, but I'm the writer. But I'd gotten to know the characters, you know, by book 3 so well that I realized what I'm trying to make them to do is out of character for their character.
So they refused to do the thing you wanted them to do.
If they'd showed up in my dreams and slapped me around and said, "You knock it off, we're not doing that, that's stupid," that would have been the only thing more obvious than just all of a sudden realizing, okay, the good news is I've got to know these characters well enough to know that they would not do this. And so I'm trying to make them do it because I'm trying to force the plot in this one direction. It didn't work. And so I basically didn't have to literally rip up because we do everything on computers now, but I took the chapters I'd written and I didn't even keep them as for future reference. I threw them out just to not ever distract myself again.
How long did you spend arguing with your characters?
That was about 2 or 3 days, like full writing days, like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, you're a very disciplined writer where you're kind of keeping office hours, right?
I do my best whenever I can. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever if you're not at your job that you do to pay the bills until such time as I have a bestseller, yeah, you have to be disciplined. Set aside. This is my writing time, and it's sacrosanct. And with very few exceptions, I will be writing here, and please don't bother me.
Please don't bother me.
Because once you get into the zone,
Yeah.
like you don't want someone like barging in for no good reason. If it's a legit reason, absolutely pop by anytime.
Legit reason. Someone in the house is bleeding. You are on fire.
Yeah, or the building, the cafe you're writing in is on fire.
Oh, yeah. See, in Kelowna, we're very concerned about
That's
fire.
true. Fires come up a lot in Kelowna, yeah.
Yeah, it's on our mind.
It
every
is.
summer.
It absolutely is, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to just ask you a few more questions about these, and then see if you will read us just a little snippet from one of them.
Yep.
If I sometimes, like with Margaret Atwood, the Onyx and Crake series, I read out of sequence, and it wasn't the right idea because I was confused more than like normally she makes sense to me, and but I didn't do it right. In this case, if I started with this guy and worked that way, would I run into trouble?
Not so much trouble as you would just feel like, why does that person know that? How could they possibly know that?
Oh, right.
Well, that wasn't here. Well, how could they possibly know that? Well, that was from here.
Right.
Yeah,
I noticed that you have a very limited point of view, that if the character you're reading, their perspective, doesn't know a thing, as a reader, I don't know.
There's none of my books have the omniscient narrator.
Yeah. So all of your narrators are, what's the word, like?
Untrustworthy.
Yes.
Yeah, because they have their own point of view as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So you think, oh, you got the inside scoop, but this guy doesn't know either.
Well, yeah, and there are 3 main voices in this book, and then a 4th one here. And in this one, the same 4 voices are there, but also some of the minor characters will get occasional short chapters on their own as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it is, again, you got to keep track. Whose chapter is this, so that you don't have someone saying something, and then someone goes, I know why they're thinking that, and thinking it to themselves. Go, but the person whose chapter it is can't know what they're thinking. So anyways, they just got to keep that all straight. So
yeah. People have very strong opinions about those characters too.
They do.
Yeah.
This guy here, this one, his name is Mateo, and he was first introduced in chapter 1 of this book, and he was only supposed to be in 1 chapter, maybe a small scene later on. His main job, in my mind, when I first started writing, was some of the protagonists are by the walled city, and he lives there, just outside, in basically a little shanty town. And he's basically giving them a bit of a guided tour of the area outside the walls.
Okay.
And his purpose was to talk about what was there without just this long, didactic kind of description.
Showing your world
building.
not
telling, yeah. So it's from the world building. But about 3-4 paragraphs from the end of the first chapter of the first draft, I had another, what if this guy is actually, now he's on the cover of the 3rd book.
Okay.
And he becomes a pivotal character, because no one can tell whose side is he really on. He seems to be playing both against the middle, and he is, obviously, because you have the different points of view, and he's like, whose side is he on? So there's a bit of a mystery element to this, although they're not mysteries.
No,
but just the whole double agent kind of thing.
4/5 through the 3rd book, I was furious with him. I was like, you're a horrible person. First I thought he was like hero, and then like, no, you're just the worst person ever, and you're going to let down all my friends.
I had one reader after this book about this character say, you better not kill him in the 3rd book, because I like him. I don't know what he's all about, but I like him. I have no promises.
Yeah, I like how the main character from the 1st book, Amos, gets more and more mentally healthy as he goes.
He has major trauma and PTSD to the point where everyone has a bit of an inner critic we talk about, that little nagging inner voice.
This is so horrible.
Writers call it the imposter syndrome, but it can apply to almost anything. But he is so PTSD driven. His inner voice
mean.
has its own voice, and he even gives it a name. Yeah, I mean, and it's like, and it keeps him in his place and keeps him trapped and pulling him back, and he has got to learn how to deal with it. And
Nice.
it gradually he learns to over the 3 books. But
Yeah.
there's two of the characters you have the 2 main characters, Amos and Aubrey, both have some level of PTSD. One more severe than the other, but they are both having to work through the trauma, and partly just being the world they're in, but also things that have happened to them.
In a world in chaos,
Yeah.
where the difference between rich and poor is just
It's incredible. Yeah, the
ripped.
1% all live inside the walled city, and the rest of us
Yeah.
live outside and fend for ourselves.
right, the best we
And
can.
It was funny. I had someone reading the early drafts of the first book, and they were saying it's really, really good. But if the people inside the walled city control everything and all the resources and all the wealth and stuff, and you talk about people having a coffee outside, how do people get coffee?
Oh, if it's Pacific Northwest,
We roast coffee. We can't grow it though.
right?
Turns out there is a coffee substitute discovered in the 70s made from the chicory root. And it's a coffee substitute. And it tastes different. It
Right.
doesn't taste like coffee, but
It's got that bitter
and
earthiness.
people that drink it enough, you develop a taste for it like anything else.
Well, if you've never tasted real coffee,
Exactly.
it would be
And
what
actually there's a
coffee
moment in
tastes
this book where one of the characters, the early sarcastic one, gets her first coffee. And she turns to her friend, she goes, "This is the 1%, this is like the real, you think they could at least make a proper cup of coffee."
because
And
not the taste she's looking for.
because these were the finest Colombian beans, and so her friend is, maybe they haven't learned about chicory. Just because that's all she knew. Yeah. Or-
Well, before too much of our time gets away, can you read me a little bit from which one of those are you going to choose?
I will start with the first one because I don't want
Okay.
to give away stuff from the second ones and the third one, because there's a cliffhanger. Well, there's a huge plot twist reveal in the last 2 sentences
Oh, gosh.
of this book that if I start here, you might, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and there's a cliffhanger here too that's, yeah. So let's
read
just
them in order.
let's go, yeah.
Can you buy them all as a set yet?
Absolutely, you can. Yeah,
Oh,
Amazon.
like on Amazon.
You can
Okay.
order them on Amazon. Either there's ebooks, hardcovers, or paperbacks.
Okay, that'd be the way to do it, right?
yeah.
Because then you've got them and you don't have to wait for the
Yeah,
next one.
yeah. Apple books, and you can get them all at the same time.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to read a portion of the first chapter.
All right.
Okay. So this is from the viewpoint of Amos, who is the guy on the cover, or the PTSD guy. So it's official. I'm a runner. Amos Morgan sat on a gurney in the makeshift infirmary several floors below the ruins of the old city. He eyed Doc Simon as she took a weary seat on a stool next to her work table. I guess there's no point in asking for a second opinion. Doc massaged her temples, eyes closed, and said nothing. Amos mentally kicked himself for his caustic attempt at humor. Calling her diagnosis into question? Brilliant. You already knew that, Doc said, so softly Amos barely heard. She planted her elbow on the work table and turned to look at him squarely. And before you get any bright ideas, my answer is still no. Surgery is out of the question. Amos clutched a handful of blanket in one fist. He managed to hold his tongue, but he couldn't conceal the hot defiance in his expression. Doc was not fooled by his silence. She waved a hand at the scanner. This new contraption is a step in the right direction. Thank you. I know you risked a lot to procure it for us. Pages. Yeah. She slipped off her stool to approach him. Now we know exactly where the hoarders inserted your implant. His fingers traced the spot, an inch below his ribcage, left side. No scar, no memory of how or when the hoarders stuck an implant inside him. A flood of emotions fought for supremacy: denial, outrage, shock, horror. The strongest won out: panic. That's it? Be patient, hang in there, hope for the best? The words escaped like bullets between his clenched teeth. He tasted bile at the back of his throat. I'm sorry, Amos. Doc ran a hand over her graying hair and sighed heavily. Pinpointing the location of your implant doesn't answer the surgical question. Her gaze met his, firm and unyielding. I don't dare operate. Surgery could trigger your implant. He inhaled a deep breath and held it, holding his inner voice at bay. And once my implant is activated, he replied, not looking away, trackers could easily target me. Doc raised an eyebrow, waiting. Amos gave in. and that would endanger everyone in our hub. Doc nodded solemnly. Amos felt less panicky after admitting their dilemma out loud. He needed to say it. Doc knew what she was doing. Trackers can still find me, even if my implant isn't activated, he said quietly, desperately. It's only a matter of time before some hoarder pushes the button, and once it's in my blood, he left the thought unfinished. Everyone knew trackers and blood were like sharks. Yeah. So you don't want the attention of a tracker.
No.
Absolutely do not.
Okay, and the hoarders are the people.
The hoarders, they call them hoarders, but it's not people who have a problem with hoarding. Well, it is and it isn't. What we call hoarders is a different thing. The 1% that lives inside the walled city, they control all the resources, all the wealth, all the everything, and everyone outside the walls calls them hoarders because they're holding everything and not sharing. So they're the rich, they're the university educated, they're the 1%. And to everyone outside, like the rest of us who are outside the walls, they're hoarders. They call us savages.
Oh, that's mean.
Yeah, that's not, and so there's no love lost between the two groups.
Yeah, look what I found. It's new, it's cute.
It looks like you're gonna bake something.
I am. And we're going from that world over into Darkwood,
yes,
where you have a character who is constantly eating Bonnetchase.
Which is, again, this is the book where I base things off of Scots Gaelic.
Yeah.
And so part of creating a world is not just how does it look, but what is it humid? Is it dry? Is it winter? Is it summer? You know, do they have seasons? But also, how does it look? What are the colors? What are the foods? What are the smells?
Yeah.
Because you reveal the world by describing what people taste, touch, feel. I mean, the 5 senses should be in your writing.
Right.
And so I thought one way of adding a bit of, you have the Scots Gaelic phrases here and there that and so I thought let's put a bit of food without getting too overwrought. Basically, it's Scots Gaelic for cheese scone.
Okay. All right. So.
Bonnetchase.
Having consulted, I learned that, and I found a recipe for really interesting looking cheese scones. I added cheese, like a lot of sharp cheddar. I used coconut milk because that gets involved with the thing back there. And I put in some red pepper flakes. I've let it sit all day so that the red pepper is like, they're going to be a little spicy.
But with coconut milk and sharp cheddar, that sounds really good.
I feel like this could be good.
Yeah.
I don't know that this will be good. So
next time I do a public reading of the book, I'll have to have a plate of this. Here, anybody want some Bonnetchase?
Yeah. Like one of your characters, I was really disturbed with how much of it he was eating. I'm like, please.
He's young and indestructible. He thinks it's not going to make him fat.
No, I wasn't worried about his weight. I was worried about his colon. I was like, is this kid gonna like cause himself some big problems? Anyway, so this hasn't been kneaded. It's just been stirred and then kind of left.
Okay.
So it's ready to be shaped, and I'm gonna shape it very, actually I think I'll get you to shape it.
Okay.
I'll tell you what to do. You know, take off your ring?
Yep.
All right. Whoop. We'll just make one big wodge of it. Okay. Womp. And all of these foods are like rustic kind of foods of the people, sort of, right?
Yeah, anybody in this society, anybody would eat Bonnetchase. It would be the people on the fantasy side, the people on the urban side. Everyone loves a good Bonnetchase.
Okay, now let's just squish that out into roughly a circle. You can just like mash it out any way you want. Keep mashing. All right. That looks pretty good. All right.
It looks kind of like Australia.
You have made Australia.
Out of cheese.
And here's a fun thing that I learned. If you're baking on parchment, you can make your edges better just by rolling it and kind of tapping it in. It's a little bit sticky business here. We'll see how it does. Now I'm going to grab, actually, I've got some knives in there. Do you want to just grab a kitchen knife? And we're going to cut through it so it's, and I'll let you do it, but I'll just do the first bit. So it's cut through like that, and then just cut it into, I don't know, maybe 8s or 6s or something.
Okay.
So like really country scones where they're cut in pie shapes. Because who has time to roll out stuff and then cut them with a cookie cutter?
No?
In, like a pizza.
Like this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Then it turns into little wedges of cheese bread.
So there's coconut milk in here, and
Oh, we'll put it up on the blog anyway. But it's a kind of a regular scone recipe. So I've got 2.5 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a tablespoon of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper flakes. Except when you see it, I did not put an 1/8 in. I put a tablespoon. So it's
really okay.
They're spicy. 1.5 cups of.
This is why you're so concerned
cheddar.
about his colon.
Yeah, no, mostly the diet of cheese and white flour just seems
Well, it's not the only thing he eats, but that,
counterindicated.
after a long day, that's what he wants to have.
Okay, there's 2 eggs, 3/4 of a cup of coconut milk, and 1/3 of a cup of cold butter that you like cut it in first.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to just pop that into the oven, or I
Sure.
can do it.
No problem.
Here, stick it in there, and we'll set the timer for about 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Yeah. So after you get this book, and get yourself some chicory, go through those ones so you can sip chicory. And there's a character in there that's always bragging about his cooking, but we never know exactly what he cooks. Here we've got a lot of characters eating bonichés, and I hope it will be amazing. I designed it so that it would really go well with a food from this book.
Yeah, which would be good because they weren't necessarily written to have the food complement, but it'd be cool if it did.
I think it would be fun. We could make, like, when you're done writing all your books, contact me. We'll make
A science fiction course meal?
a science fiction. Hey, that would be really fun to like have a big party with just the food that's in your little worlds. So this world here, this is the one. What's happening here
This is
again?
the climate change one.
Climate change,
Yes.
cheese scone. Is there any other food in here
No,
named?
there was enough enough things to adjust to. They were otherworldly and
Yeah,
language was and a lot of terminology.
right.
I thought, the bread's just a small touch. You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some writers might have done more than that, but I just want, for me, it was just putting little touches in, like, or walking to a certain place, like, whoa, get a whiff of that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not of, well, this would be a good smell, but just.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah. But
And we've got the timer going. Thank
I
you.
do, yeah.
All right, I'm going to get this out of the way, or Renee will be like, "Can't you move your garbage?" There we go.
Quality control person.
Quality control.
Every production needs one.
So while we're talking about this, do you have a
Yeah,
piece that you can read out of this one?
Sure. There's 3 very short vignette chapters at the beginning.
Okay.
One from the point of view of the cameraman, where he's out with his reporter buddy. The second one is, there's a character in here called Glaucidon Bahel, or Glaucidon for short. Basically, he does industrial espionage.
Oh, okay.
He's like a spy for hire, but he's not a spy who goes out, James
It's-
Bond. He's just sort of
Okay.
someone who infiltrates different places and learns things and goes back. And
Oh,
so it's a chapter about his hiring by one of the main antagonists in the book. And the third short chapter is from the point of view of this priestess we've been talking about. Which one would you like to hear from first? Well, just we have time for one, so.
oh, I feel like the priestess is the necessary one.
Well, she scared you. Anyways.
She scared me. She's be a Klingon.
She has actually probably a lot in common with Klingons.
Yeah.
Okay, so the chapter is a very short chapter called Mark Kryn of Diliang Lusang. And Mark Kryn, of course, is her name. You seem troubled, Mark Kryn. Ard Shigar's gravelly voice interrupted her reverie. He peered at her with obsidian dark eyes, one gnarled hand wrapped around his wooden staff. Mark Kryn lifted her head, gazing at him through half-lidded eyes. Among the forest prophets, she alone was tall enough to look the Ard in the eye. It was a memory, Shigar, of an era long past. Her fingers tightened in a painful spasm around the bone mask in her hand, before the desert spirits set their teeth against leaf and branch. The wall-mounted torches lit the Ard's face in a flickering pattern of light and shadow. His head dipped in a solemn nod, and the lines in his weathered face seemed to deepen. And what did the forest reveal to you, bearer of memories? Mark Kryn swallowed with difficulty, battered by a sudden desire to be in the forest's central glade, not in this accursed cellar, not near the venomous black mist hovering just above the room's earthen floor. I stood upon the slopes above Caron, she said, her husky contralto raising a faint echo. She closed her eyes, recalling the vision's details. Long before it became the capital city, Caron, then only a small village on the shores of Sagal Bay. She inhaled deeply, scenting the malodorous rot emanating from the mist. I heard a voice behind me. I was powerless to turn and see who spoke, but the words... Ard Shigar waited for a ponderous moment before speaking. The words, Mark Kryn? What manner of fell omen has stolen your breath? A tremor ran down her spine, like one of the quick-footed desert lizards. It was the ancient war rune, she said hoarsely, the eve of battle, proclaimed aloud for the first time. Her face hardened. It was all she could do to restrain herself from spitting at the malevolent mist. The dark portal of what lurks below was there as well. The ancient battle was won, the words caught in her throat. The Ard donned his bone mask, peering at her through the carved eye slits. And yet the mist has reappeared. He clutched his staff, the veins in his hand stunning out in sharp relief. Caron's contempt for the ways of the forest has invited its return. Mark Kryn glared at the odious mist, resisting its hypnotic appeal, its attempt to lure her into its flesh-eating embrace. She spoke, her voice tinged with resolve and bitterness. The Caranians shrug and say it is only climate change. The fools have no idea what they've unleashed. She met Shigar's gaze and slipped her bone mask on. I will not yield our realm without a fight. Ard Shigar smiled grimly. All of Diliag-Lusan stands with you, bearer of memories.
Oof. And that feels very Tolkien-y.
Yes, and yeah.
Or Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aes Sedai kind of a thing, yeah.
Yeah. Did you watch that or
Actually,
read
I had not read it before. I'm reading it now for the first time. I live on a rock or something, but I've been reading it and going, wow, this guy is very Tolkien-esque and just great writer. And
Okay, but the Whistler Independent Book Award said Kane creates an intriguing world that demands attention. Darkwood will certainly have a place in my personal library beside the likes of Dune and The Way of Kings.
Yeah, well, I know when I saw that, it was like, wow, that's heady company, because I mean, Dune is like, it's Dune.
Yeah. It's Dune.
Yeah, it's
the top of the heap of
it's like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
exactly. But it just really, it was high praise. Of course, I'm including that in the front of the book when I saw that report.
No kidding. And it's a very beautiful book. You've got some maps and then a little bit of the poetry that the creepy lady refers to.
Yeah, the eve of battle. It's a war rune, and so the eve of battle is written out here, so that people, can see what it actually is and see how it plays out as the book goes on.
Okay. Yep. One thing I noticed when you were talking about this series, especially this character right here, it seemed like he surprised you with what he was up to. Does that mean that you don't write with a formula?
I do not write like a formula. I have no beef with authors who choose to do that. Everyone has their way of doing things. In general, you have what you call plotters and pantsers. Plotters will sit down and they will list out chapter by chapter whose character is doing what, and they'll have the whole story outlined in 2 or 3 pages.
Oh, okay.
And then once they have the outline, they know what's going to happen, who's going to betray who's going to save who's going to unfortunately be lost, and how the book ends. And then once they have the outline done, then they say, okay, this is a good structure, this is going to work. Then they go back and actually write the chapters.
Okay, I can see how that would have its benefits.
To people that are wired that way, they can't not write. To them, this is the way it should be done. And if you try to make them do it any other way, you're going to hurt them as writers, because they are organized, it's the way their brains are wired, and they couldn't not write that way.
Right.
Pantsers, the phrase just flying by the seat of your pants. Probably the most famous pantser we know is Deven Kane. And
famous pantser.
yeah, he says when he sits down at his typewriter, or pen and paper, whichever he writes with first, he has no idea what the story's going to be about, who the characters are, what their names are, what they're facing. He just starts to write and sees what comes out. Another science fiction writer, Terry Pratchett, once said, the first draft is just you telling yourself the story. And if you're a pantser, that's what it feels like. You're exploring the story.
Right.
And pantsers will often say, look at plotters and go, well, like this character was supposed to be a one-off character in the first chapter of this book, and he turned out to be pivotal.
Right.
I didn't plan that.
Huh.
You know, and this character on the cover was supposed to die. Either between these two books or shortly after this one started, because of what had happened to her.
Right.
Instead, what happened to her became a pivotal thing to the point where she's the cover.
Right.
So the characters, as you develop the story, not only will they prevent you from doing the things that you try to make them do that's not a character, but as you get, they will come up with their own storylines as you go. And you keep getting more of these what ifs, what if, what if, what if. At which point I should also point out that I have ADHD. And ADHD people always have these ideas that spark other ideas. And unfortunately, in some writing circles, you will get people on either side of that debate insisting that you have to do it this certain way.
Do it one way or another.
And so, and I, you know, hey, we can learn from each other. I've read a number of books about writing. They're written by plotters and by pantsers and stuff. And there's a lot of good content, a lot of good nuggets you can glean from all of them. But my take on all of it is we can learn from each other, but I think it's abusive to try and force a pantser to be a plotter or vice versa.
Well, if your brain just doesn't work that way.
You got to respect the other person's process. And some people are kind of hybrid. They do both.
Like either way, you come out with a good novel. I think sort of the form of writing maybe that I feel is maybe abusive to the readers is when it's like you're writing sort of very simplistic to beats. And it's like, okay, in this opening, this happens right here, this one thing happens. So it's like every book that you read from this author is kind of the same-ish.
But here's the thing, a lot of readers like the familiarity.
That's true.
And that's why people that like the beat thing is like Save the Cat writes a novel.
Right.
They follow kind of the beat thing, or it used to be Freytag's pyramid, or the three-act play. Is basically, and so Save the Cat writes a novel, it would be an example of that.
Okay.
And I read that, but it was probably, I'm a pantser obviously, but as close to plotting as I could get was Save the Cat, although the hero's journey, the 12-step model they have there, it makes sense, I understand it.
Maybe
but
it's a good thing to use if you get stuck.
Well, for me, because Save the Cat does have percentages in it. By the 20% mark, this should have happened.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what, they're right.
Yeah.
If you haven't got what the problem, who the antagonist is, what he's facing, what the obstacles are, and what's the payoff that makes it worth him taking his step out of his comfortable world to enter the uncomfortable world and slay the dragon, whatever that might be, in any genre.
Right.
If that hasn't happened the first like 15-20% of the book,
oh yeah,
how are you going to engage the reader? They want to know what is the task, what is the obstacle, what's the payoff, what's the negative payoff if the guy doesn't do this thing. And
especially if it's like an ordinary person that gets thrown into an extraordinary circumstance.
Yes, which is
because
how
then
most,
we're aligning ourselves with
exactly.
the ordinary
People
guy.
want to identify with the protagonist. So yes, when I read the Save the Cat, they have actual percentage points, and they're not wrong. I mean, I don't slavishly go, okay, 20%. I mean, okay, but no, but just the overarching theme is get the story established early, you know, so people know what the stakes are, what's it.
I wonder if you can like retro-engineer your books and see that at the end it does sort of fit that, because we're set up in our culture anyway for that kind of timing.
Well, I mean, I don't know if Stephen King said it first, but he said it a lot. If you want to be a writer, you need to do two things: write a lot and read a lot. And the more you read in the genre you love to write in, you're absorbing how stories are told in your genre.
Right.
And so even though you're not officially plotting, I think subconsciously we probably plot more than we realize because we've gotten used to the cadence of how stories are told.
Right, right.
And so if we, and when I, especially when I was writing these 3 books, well, probably all of them, but particularly with these 3, because these are my first 3 fiction novels. I've been writing for years, but novels, I haven't been writing novels. So this is a new direction for me. And so I was trying to do kind of a bit of the beat approach and make it like a TV show.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
What's like, come back after the commercial break. So every chapter should be like, bring me back after the commercial. Something
I
needs
like
to
that
be.
they're short. So, like I was thinking when my kids were really little, it would be something that you could like sneak a chapter in between chaotic elements. And
That's
then,
right. Yeah.
then come back and like, or if you're hiding in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Hiding from your children. All right, I'm just checking our bonnet chase. I'm going
You
to
have
peek
5
in
minutes,
here. Yeah, I don't know if it's right though. It's right.
Okay.
Okay,
so-
over in here,
Yes.
I've made a sturdy rustic stew.
Recreva is what it's called.
Recreva
It
is what it's called.
You probably can't see on the cover from the distance you'll be at, but this gentleman on the cover, who is one of the main protagonists, 2 things make him interesting. One, he is the part of the oppressed race in this story. He has cat's eyes. His pupils are what they call apex. They're an ambush predator, which means he sees really well in the dark. And so he and his people were sought by the mining companies on this world to come and help mine for thorium, which was sort of like uranium. It was a power source. And so because they could see in the dark much better than the rest of us could, they were great as miners. Then the mines dried up. And these guys didn't want to go back to the other side of the world where they came from. They were 4 generations in. This was their home now. They wanted to stay. And so they got kind of shoved into their own little ghetto kind of a thing. Anyhow, but this character is interesting because he has the ambush predator eyes, which is what sets him apart from the dominant society in where the story takes place. The other thing is, he's dead. And
So is he very boring? Being
not at
dead
all.
and
He's not at all, because Treehawk, which is the last name of the main character, although he hides it at first because he's trying to get away from his background, he has the ability, like his father before him. Remember, we have psychics that come into with police departments, work with psychics to help find missing people sometimes. Like Scotland Yard would use psychics to find people who were missing or whatever, murdered. Well, these particular guys, there was certain people, only a few people have the genetic trait where they can sense where someone has been killed through, well, they haven't died through natural causes, they've been killed.
Oh, okay.
And they can sense that, the injustice of it.
Murder.
And they would see the blood cries out.
Okay.
Which is actually comes out of Genesis in the Bible, where, you know, Cain and Abel, and he killed his brother,
Right, the
and
first
God
murder.
says the blood cries out from the ground.
That's a
And I thought
creepy
that was,
thought.
yeah, so I thought I used that phrase in here. And so Jared, who is this character on the cover, he's been killed, obviously by nefarious means, because the main character, Treehawk, can see him, converse with him, and if Treehawk and Dalton and Jared are in the same room, anybody within about a 15-meter radius who's with them can see and hear him too.
Oh, so Dalton is like a...
I see dead people. No, he
Like-
sees and he can hear them.
no, kind of like a signal booster.
He is, absolutely he is. So the conversations, there's a lot of humor in this book. I mean, it's a pretty dark book in some respects, but there's a lot of humor. You know, I think at one point Dalton Treehawk says to Jared, like, he's not quite wanting to believe it just yet. And he says, so have you come here to haunt me, or is this some great message from the great beyond? And Jared looks at him and he goes, you know, for speaking with the dead, you sure are skeptical about the paranormal.
I find that your dead person is really, really funny.
He is funny.
It reminded me a lot of different dead people in Odd Thomas series with Dean Koontz.
Yes.
Where they're just hilarious. And so you've got your guy who's hiding his...
Trying to run from his heritage.
Yeah, from his dad who has done something and we don't know what it is. Yeah. And talking with this really charming dead guy.
Well, yeah, the back cover just says, if the dead can't get justice, they'll settle for revenge. Dalton Smith, main character, believes his shady past is finally behind him. Recently married, a new name and career, and a decisive break from his father, Stony Cove's most notorious felon. You are a speaker with the dead, a young Asukan woman. Asuka is the oppressed race. A young Asukan woman seeking justice for her brother's unsolved murder accosts Dalton in a local bar, shattering the web of lies he's crafted to protect himself and the woman he loves. Beneath the sunken city, the segregated home of Stony Cove's Asukan population, the unavenged dead begin to rise.
Uh-oh.
The savage evidence of their fury forces Dalton out of hiding, back into the world he swore to leave behind. But before Dalton can challenge Stony Cove's demons, he'll have to confront his own, which includes his father, of course, who is still alive, but in prison, where he belongs.
A lot of your characters have some psychological healing to do.
Because we're all broken people.
Yeah.
You know, even the best heroes have a dark side, and even the darkest people have something worthwhile. Okay, here we go.
Okay, here's your Rekreva.
Rekreva is made by the Asukan people, and like a lot of...
And me.
yeah. And so if you were going to any kind of a ethnic part of town, like Little Italy in Toronto,
Right.
or different places, you might go to the restaurant. Like when I lived in LA, my friend said, "Oh, I'm taking you to this restaurant over here. This is the best Mexican food in LA." I was in Hollywood actually. I said, "How do you know?" And he goes, "Look how many Mexicans eat here."
Yeah.
I'm like, of course, the food is authentic enough that people that know the food will come. Okay, that's a good thing. So,
Avoid the tourists.
Rekreva is eaten by everybody. The main characters with Dalton and his wife Mallory, they love it. They always go to their favorite cafe to have it. But it's not their food. It's the Asukan food, but they've learned to appreciate it. And so the joke is like, it's not unless the grandmother's recipe is in the kitchen, it's not authentic. So, yeah.
Yep.
And same way would be in North America. Grandma's recipe's better.
Always. Well, it could be cooked a little bit more, but since we're almost out of time, that is what we've got. All right. So
what have you put in here? What is Rekreva
all right,
actually?
Rekreva.
When you read about Rekreva, and then you went to your
go
cookbook.
and make it up. Okay, this is a completely made up thing.
So is Rekreva.
I know. This gives me a lot of freedom.
It does, yeah.
Okay, so I've got 2.5 pounds of chicken cut into 1-inch cubes. I was looking for a specific mix that, like a spice mix that's used in the Philippines, just because I really like the flavors in there.
Okay.
I couldn't find it. I even went to Freshco and they didn't have it. But I made up for other things. We've got 1 potato cut into bite-sized pieces, a red bell pepper, some celery, an onion, 3 cloves of garlic, some olive oil. I used fish sauce, which is that amazing fermented delicacy that makes things like pho smell and taste amazing, and not just like regular stock. So it's super good. And coconut milk. So it should go pretty well with those things. Plus, I added, when I tasted it, I was like, oh, you're a bit salty. So I added a whole bunch of pineapple juice. So it not only increased the volume, but it lowers the impression of salt. And because it was really watery, and I'm thinking this is kind of another rustic dish.
Yeah, this is stuff your grandma makes, yeah.
Yeah, it's something grandma would make, so maybe one of our guests this year, she's like, this is peasant soup. And it's like, it's almost always the best. And so this is really, really hearty. I threw in a little bit of rice, and because it was so watery, I'm like, my thought on Rekreva is it's creamy and hearty and something that would just be like, oh, this hits the spot.
Yeah.
I'm so hungry and this is amazing. So it's also thickened with some lentils.
Nice.
Yeah. So
on a coldest day in Stony Cove,
yeah,
you could curl up with a bowl of this by the fire.
This is what you want on the cold day in Stony Cove.
Okay.
So it's not pretty, but we're going to garnish it, and the garnish will be prettier. Okay, there's a bowl for you.
Okay, spoons are back here too?
Spoons are right here.
Oh, perfect.
Actually,
You've done this before.
1 or 2 times. Here, while I'm dishing this up, do you want to smush this? It's just some, here, I'll move this out of the way. It's just some butter and some chives.
Okay.
And we can use that to butter our
Beverages.
Beverages. Yeah, thanks. Okay.
And Recreva was something else too, where you went, okay, whatever you're going to call this feel, you've got to be able to say it out loud because this will show up in your readings.
Yeah, yeah. Wouldn't that suck if you can't say it out loud?
I've had that happen, and I actually went back and changed it.
Ooh, yeah.
Reading,
That would
well,
be the worst.
being part of a writer's group, you will bring your stuff like a part of a chapter for them to, for you to read and they critique.
Okay.
And when you find yourself stumbling over words,
Yeah.
you don't have to wait for the critique. You know.
You need to fix this.
Yeah, this
thing.
word is not going to fly.
All right. You might want to grab a couple of knives. So
Okay.
we're going to like break that off and then put some butter on it. For garnishing, just for a little bit of texture difference, I've got some of those like fried onions that you can get in a weird kind of can thing. I've never tried them before, but I like ate one. I'm like, yeah, this will go. Want to try one
Sure.
naked?
I'm curious.
Okay, so I'm just going to plunk it on top. It's Renee back there sneezing. All right, and here, I'll get you to do this. So you're just going to grab these chives and we're just going to snip them so that give that little hint of color and freshness. And then put as many as you feel like this is the right amount of chives. And chiving is a personal decision. How much is right? Who knows?
Well, part of writing about this kind of stuff is you want to be specific enough to give someone an idea of what they're reading about, but not so specific that if they don't happen to know the ingredients,
Oh yeah.
they don't know what you're talking about because you want to leave some of it to their imagination too.
Yeah.
Because reading is supposed to excite the imagination. Okay.
So you can obey my instructions or not.
No, that's a great idea. Makes it interesting.
All right. So yeah, it's cooked. The cheese is very, very melty. So here's our bonnetjes. I'm going to grab another one for you. Here's a giant one for you. And then
Okay.
if you feel like it needs something more, you can put a little bit of butter on it.
Okay. I'm going to try it just by itself to see what it tastes like, and then I'm definitely going to add some of this here too.
Spicy. All right. This is really good. Hey, what do you think?
I love it.
It's got a little hit of spice in there.
The spices, I can, as it's still back burning a little bit.
It's a little
It's probably
bit
a
of
cooking
burn.
term for that, but
It's like, oh, do we want it that spicy? I don't know.
I
I'm
do.
no chef. I'm a home cook.
oh, I like that. It's really good. Okay, so use a knife to get my.
Just dip in there. Now you're bald.
Really? You want to put this much on?
I'm sure.
I'll let you know.
Okay. And then here's our cute little
Recreva.
Recreva. Okay. That is amazing. Renee, I've made like 4 liters of this stuff. You're going to have to take some home.
Okay.
You can try that. That's my, in my heart when I read about Recreva, that's what I'm
That's what you're. Okay.
That's what I'm picturing. It's really hot.
This is really good.
Yeah, Recreva, right?
Yeah.
All right.
And you're right. It's really hot too. But yeah. Wow.
It's really, really hot. Okay, so tell the people where they can find you, or you're going to be at Calgary Writers Festival in Calgary. What's
It's
it called?
When Words Collide.
When Words Collide. So
Yep.
you're there. You're on some panels and you're teaching
In a
some
couple
stuff.
panels, and I'm doing one workshop.
Because you do editing as well.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Not just my own. I edit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, so you're teaching the writers and you're going to be
learning whatever I can for the rest of the
Learning
classes.
whatever you
There's
can.
always more to learn.
there's
There's
yeah.
always more new skills to try and tweak, and the more you learn, the more you find out you need to learn. And so writing conferences are great, and you spend a whole weekend with other people that are as nerdy as you are
Oh,
about
yeah.
writing. And so it's just fun to say, oh, my people, here they are, you know.
Yeah.
All different genres of writing, but they're all writers. You know,
Right, so they all kind of get you. And then we can get all your books.
So. All the books through print. Print is Amazon.
Okay.
The paperback or hardcover. You can also get Kindle, of course, but Apple Books, Kobo,
All right.
Google Play, it's everywhere.
I think I saw this one at a live bookstore here in
It
town.
is here, that one is on the shelves at Chapters Indigo,
Chapters Indigo.
down at
Okay.
Ocean Park Mall.
All right. So it's probably selling out. So if you're here in town and you just want to grab this, you just hustle down.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to have to get it on Amazon, or it's other places too, right? Like Google Play and that kind of thing.
Google Play has it too as well.
Okay. So yeah, look it up, find it, buy it, buy a lot of it, buy them all.
And Deven Kane, 2 E's,
Yes.
devenkane.com.
Devin like 7.
Yep, Deven like 7. So devenkane.com will get you
Oh.
short write-ups and links to all the books on all the various platforms. And a bit more
nice.
about me and a few
Okay.
articles I wrote about writing and the creative process and how strange
Beautiful.
it all is.
It's a strange world. All right, thank you so much for joining me here. Thank you
Well, thank
for
you.
indulging my
Indulging.
interpretations of your fantasy world.
I'm hooked on your interpretation.
All right, that's the best I could ever hear. All right, yeah, right. It's good.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's like coconut chicken pineapple goodness.
Well, so like I say, it's the kind of meal you would have on a cold winter's night
Yeah,
at home by a fireplace, just to kind of,
not a blazing hot
comfort
Kelowna
food.
summer day.
Comfort food.
It is
Yeah.
comfort food and very rustic and chunky and get ya.
All we need now is a glass of hickory root.
I don't know.
That
if
might
it
not
would
work,
go.
no.
This is the
But
pairing
these
challenge.
two
That would
work.
suck.
These two work.
Yeah, as a pair, this is good. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.